Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Trezza. I'm the founder of Jolla LearningWorks, and I'm really excited to see you all here tonight. This is our ADHD and LD Success Stories event. We're really happy to have this wonderful panel here to tell you their stories tonight. For the past 9 years, my learning center, Jolla LearningWorks, has been providing one-on-one educational therapy for students who learn differently. We see students come in and out of our offices all day who struggle in school, and yet we see in them their gifts and know they have tremendous potential for success, as long as they can make it through school with hope. And that's what tonight is about. I was so happy when I shared my idea for this event with Donica, and she was enthusiastically agreed to help me co-host and put this on for you guys. Donica and her team helps us figure out what's going on behind our students' learning struggles so that we can do our work to help them overcome those academic challenges.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, panel members, who are so generously offering their time this evening and sharing their story. On a weekly basis, I work with students to really figure out learning strengths and weaknesses and areas of challenge, and to clarify maybe diagnostically what's going on. After I evaluate, I really want to know now what. Now that we know where the strengths and challenges lie, what can we do to advocate for these students? What types of interventions and accommodations or learning tools and techniques can we offer them? So I'm really excited tonight because our panel, as you can see in the flyer, read their bio, highly successful and overcame a lot of these challenges that face my clients on a weekly basis. And I'm really hoping that we can leave here feeling inspired and encouraged and helping our students navigate that path towards success.
So tonight we plan to dive deep. This is about the real-life triumphs through journeys that were bumpy, to say the least. But every one of these individuals has come through with shining successes and beautiful, satisfying adult lives that they are here to tell you about. We do have a period where we're going to take questions from the audience, so you all have a 3x5 card that's attached to your program. Feel free to jot down questions, and if you just pass them to the aisle, Erin, who is wearing a black cardigan there, will be walking around to gather them from you guys. So sit back and enjoy, and let's get to know our panel before we start our discussion.
I'll get to start.
Would you like to start? Are you okay with that?
Okay. Are you guys good with me? With microphone? Without the microphone? I'm pretty loud. So, good evening. I'm Dr. Kristen Kale, Dr. K, for all those people out there. I think we all started our discussion today with saying what we are diagnosed with. So I've got a whole gamut of stuff. So I am dyslexic. I was diagnosed with dyslexia in the 70s. Hard to believe. It's all the Botox I did. So the 1970s, as well as reading, comprehension, and spelling. Those are my two areas of expertise that I really struggled with. And so did you want me to continue on in my bio, or just a little?
Talk about what you do today.
Okay, so what I do today is I earned my PhD 6 years ago, which was a great feat when I was told that I'd never graduate from grade school, let alone high school, let alone college, or my master's. A little revenge is sweet, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I own my third company. I had a company in my 20s, a company in my 30s, and this is my company in my 40s. I won't tell how far in my 40s I am, but it's in my 40s. And my company right now is a software company. I know nothing about software, and I could, of course, always fail and be successful. And I think one of the themes that you'll hear from us is probably failures. We've all seen it, and we've all overcome it. So I've lived here in San Diego since 1996. I'm originally from the Midwest, and I think you'll get some more of my bio. You don't want me to give anything away. That's perfect. So Jen?
Hello, I am Jennifer Anderson. Can you hear me okay, or do you want the mic? Okay. So I am a residential real estate agent here.
I will hold.
Thank you. Residential real estate agent here in San Diego. Our company is based primarily in North County, and we specialize in coastal properties. Louder, like.
Hello? Hello.
I was dyslexia at a very young age. So elementary school, I showed up for that about 2 or 3 years behind grade level. So that was really fun for the school system. And once I found my place in my career, I was able to be recognized nationally within a year and a half, and then have been recognized down here for volume and just production and contribution within the industry. Do you want me to go into more specifics about my? Okay, good.
Hello, friends. My name is Ryan Shorthill. I'm from the great state of New Hampshire. Is this working for you guys? Wicked good time. My town that I grew up in was founded in 1623, the 7th oldest permanent settlement in America. I have ADHD, ADD, learning differences. When I was a kid, they called them disabilities, but I realized they're the ones with the disabilities, and they just want to be like us. And I discovered early on that I was always in trouble for being myself, which was really lame. And somewhere along the lines, I learned that I didn't get traditional sports, but I started dancing when I was about 14 at some concerts, and I said, well, this feels a lot better than standing in a hallway. So I did a lot of dancing in my life. It felt really good. And then I went on to start a company. I'm an educator. I've traveled all over the world. I've done lots of great, fun, amazing things. I have a very successful organization called Positive Adventures. We work with private schools, public schools, CEOs, presidents of companies, and they all pay me lots of money to talk, which is great because I knew I couldn't stop talking, so I figured out how to get paid to talk. And I will share with you this one small brief snippet before we move on. Do not worry. Do not worry about your child. Do not worry about your differences. Do not worry about any of those things. You are perfect, you are unique, you are talented, you have much to offer, and screw the rest of them, you can't keep everybody happy.
So, I've always been the soft talker. I'll use the mic. My name is Seth Schwartz. I am a special education attorney. I became an attorney when I was about 31 or 32. That's how long it took me to get through my education. After dropping out of college twice and being delayed in graduating from high school, I have had significant attention problems that have literally interfered with almost everything from my relationships to reading a book to you name it. I've been successful. I got into special education because of my sister. She had autism. And in doing that, I met advocates and learned a lot about myself and learned a lot about my family and decided this is probably about the only thing I can ever do again. So I'm really excited to share with you the one thing that I share with clients and is a big part of my firm now, which is that you gotta have hope. Because just because you're different, just because you're struggling doesn't mean you don't have a future. It just means that your timeline might be different than somebody else's. It might even be faster than somebody else's. But we can do a lot. And a lot of times for me, just so you guys know, my lack of attention meant I was thinking about other things and tying ideas together and things that nobody else would even think goes together. And as a result, I'm much more creative from my business to my personal life to the way that I interact with people. And creativity is how I've driven my personal life and my business, and it keeps my mind going, it keeps me excited, and it's a very great thing to have. And I'm pretty sure in talking to everybody up here that you're going to find that they all have that spark of creativity too.
My name's Doug Hampers, and I grew up in New Hampshire. So there must be
Tissue guy!
I don't know.
Good for your day.
I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder in my 30s. So it wasn't until I was in medical school and past medical school that I had started residency in orthopedic surgery, and I was having trouble passing my written boards. And I had to take it a few times, and that's how I discovered I had ADHD. So it was a long journey for me, but I had problems going through all the school, just getting through. So I graduated, obviously, and also did a combined MBA program at Dartmouth, and was an orthopedic surgeon for about 10 years, had started my own practice, and then I got an award for being one of the top 3 orthopedic surgeons in the Pittsburgh area by the readers of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. And that's when I said, that's great, that's the best award I've ever gotten, I'm out of here. And started my own company that deals in medical education and training other doctors on how to implant, how to basically use certain medical devices. So it's kind of interesting. I went into medical education because some things are easy and some things are really hard for me. And that was one of the areas that was really easy. So I chose to go into that area. That's a bit about me.
Hello everyone, I'm Chuck Helsel, and I have a whole bunch of notes here. That's kind of how I roll. And I bet this could go on till midnight. We all love talking. So, how old are you when you're in second grade? Can you help me?
8.
Yeah. Do you know? Or do you know?
7 or 8.
7 or 8. Okay, great. So, in the 1965, I was not really diagnosed. They just were very frustrated with me because I was bouncing off the walls. And boy, Chuck would be, really good, but if we could just get him to sit down. And I'd say words backwards and just struggled in a lot of different things. And Miss Quigley, the writing teacher and the speech teacher, would take me to her office, which she shared with the janitor. And that's where all the supplies were. So that probably could answer why my brain's fried certain chemicals or whatnot. But so there was no formal diagnoses in those days, and just life has always been hard with me. I'm just really blessed to be here to share a few of my stories. When I had lunch with Megan, she told me who all these other professionals are, and it's like, can't hold a candle to any of them. Just they're amazing. And 25 years ago, I was at Children's Hospital doing a tour with a group of people that wanted to give back to the world, and I said, I want to volunteer. And the guy who ran the volunteer program said, sorry, you can't volunteer here. And I said, what, are you crazy? I want to volunteer. I want to do good. He said, no, you have a better calling. And 6 years ago, I told Megan I'm available 24/7, which I'm telling all of you, to talk to kids, parents, educators about my experiences. So hopefully I get to share a little more tonight. Thank you for letting me be here.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the question and answer portion. So like we mentioned, as we have some prepared questions and some that came through and some guests were RSVP, but feel free to start thinking of things and writing down on your cards and we'll collect. So the first question, and we're just going to do this informally so it won't be like down the road, just kind of raise your hand, I'll pass you the mic. So related specifically to your struggles with learning, what was one of your most challenging times or when you most doubted your abilities?
I sort of alluded to the fact that I was diagnosed in my mid-30s, and the reason I was diagnosed was I was trying to take...
Maybe move up a little closer. It's a bring yours.
I'll go a little closer. I might even swallow it. But I was diagnosed in my 30s with ADHD, and the reason I got diagnosed was I was having problems passing my boards for orthopedic surgery. So it actually got to the point where I was failing the boards, and you can only take them once a year. So I ended up getting tested, finding out at that point that I had ADHD, and I ended up suing the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery, or the orthopedic boards, because they wouldn't give me extra time in which to take the boards. And in the process of doing that, the lawyer told me, you should go see a doctor about this. I ended up seeing Ned Hallowell, who you may be familiar with, wrote multiple books, the most famous being Driven to Distraction. And he said to me, you know what, why don't you try some of this medicine, see how it goes, and then you can always sue the boards later. So I did both. And I took the boards on the medication. I didn't even study and passed after failing twice. So it was a big deal for me anyway to start medication and get me on the path to being able to just get over that particular hurdle. But I had hurdles all the way through. That was the biggest one that I actually couldn't get past. That was my biggest challenge.
I'll share mine. In second grade, my math teacher told my parents because I couldn't learn multiplication tables, I was not going to amount to anything while I was standing in the classroom at second grade. So what was that, 7 years old, 8 years old? I was sent to a special school for 5th grade where they wanted me to jump ahead to a different classroom because they didn't know really what to do with me because I was in that period of time where there really wasn't a decision on what was wrong with me. They just knew that I couldn't grasp any mathematics. So by the time I was a freshman in high school, I had to pass algebra. Whoever uses algebra today? Nobody. That's my shirt. I'm never going to use algebra again in my life. I couldn't pass it. I had to change my entire degree program from being college-bound to non-college-bound because I couldn't pass algebra. So college comes, I can't pass it again. Just can't do it. Luckily, I've had a teacher who saw in me every week that I showed up. I showed up, I took the test. I took the test 64 times. Oh my God. My freshman year in college to pass algebra. D equals degree. I got a D in algebra. Got a D in algebra. I've never used it to this day. So lessons learned for me is I suck at algebra, but I'm great at some other stuff.
I had a similar story with the kinds of tests that you have to take. I am an experiential educator, so my degree, I had to become an EMT, a wilderness EMT, a lifeguard. I had to be able to do education in the wilderness and in the backcountry because I knew I certainly didn't want to be inside for a living. I like being outside. So to be an EMT, you have to pass the National Registry test. I studied my butt off, and then I took this test. I thought I did great. I got a 69, you need a 70. Can't graduate college without it. So I sat in the class again, and I had a whole study group, and I had all the note cards, and I studied my face off. Now I'm a junior, and I got a 69 again. So then I gave it the East Coast effort, the Shortle try. I overdosed on learning. I sat in the library for like 14 hours a day. I was flipping note cards in my sleep because it's all contrived, right? You put it in, you spit it out, you forget everything. It's not real education. It's just a matter of how much can you memorize and how much can you puke out. That's not critical thinking. That's not how am I going to save this life. Is it A, B, C, D, or E? It's just bubbles. Needless to say, it was now my senior year. I had already had 5 years between 4 schools, 3 states, and 2 countries to get this one degree. And I was like, I need this degree. And so I ended up getting an 86, which was the highest I had ever seen anybody get in the degree program because I knew if I didn't get it, I'd be a loser. But in reality, I didn't really care, but I knew I needed to pass it to get the piece of paper to make my mom happy. So that was my hard time.
So my share is actually from younger years, as I was thinking about as parents would be relating to their children and trying to prepare. It's really in those formative elementary years that you're wondering, where is this going to go? How are they going to be successful? How am I supposed to show up for them? And there was this one week we were preparing for the spelling bee, and it was then with an E and then with an A. I want you to know I still am 50-50 on this. And my mom poured her heart and soul into our mornings before school. She would talk to me when I came home from school, and it's a 50-50 guess. I want you to know. I was like, I got this. So Friday morning before we're going in, she's like, okay, how do you feel? I'm like, really good. She's like, how do you spell BAM? I'm like, T-H-E-N, and she put her head on the table, and I was like, oh my God, I've failed my mother forever. I've tried the hardest I can, in my hearts of hearts. I've written this, and the E looks the same as the A, and why do we really need these 2 letters of grade? Do we really need it? And I was just devastated because I was trying as hard as I could, and I literally couldn't see see the difference. I couldn't even hear the difference. She's like, then. I'm like, yeah. So, as a parent, I want you to understand that just because they might not get those specific moments, it doesn't mean that they're not trying. And that was my biggest struggle because I was trying so hard and I couldn't get there. And what happened through the rest of my education is my parents rewarded me for the effort, not for the success, but that I showed up and I studied and I didn't. Oh, by the way, I was a runner. If it was study time, out the front door. Or I would run to the closet. Those are my two hiding places. I'm like, don't bring those books out. I'm out. So I would just say focus on the behavior because it's those behaviors that help you to be successful in the long run. The education system is set up for people that are good at reading, but that doesn't mean that is a successful person. That's one measure. So then and then, I still struggle with it. So yes.
Okay, so
One failure.
do you want to share, Chuck? Okay. Our next question is, when faced with challenges through your school years, which you've alluded to here, what were some of the positive coping mechanisms you found helpful in your journey? Tips, tricks, tools.
It's my favorite one.
Of course, it's your favorite.
Positive coping mechanism. I knew that grades were contrived. They were not a reflection of me as a being, who I am as a helper, or what I am to my family. Now I understand for parents, I'm a parent, we want our kids to get A's, we want them to get scholarships, we want them to go get long jobs with big money and whatever it may be, but ultimately, that's your child's choice, not your choice. And ultimately, the grade they get in 8th grade bears no relevance when they're giving birth to your first grandchild. You're not going to say, God, they got that grandchild, I can't believe she got a C in Spanish. So that was a positive coping mechanism for me. Grades are important. My cousin got into Harvard, was never accepted into Harvard. There's always ways to get around things. I never took my SATs and I got a 4.0 from a university. I've never made an Excel spreadsheet in my life. I have paid people to do that for me. So another positive coping mechanism was nature. All my life I was being put down in school all the time. Go to the principal, you're trouble, you're bad, you're this. The deer in the field in the woods of New Hampshire didn't say those things to me. It felt more normal, felt more balanced, it felt more real. And that's why I went into a career that was aligned with how I felt, which is outdoor experiential education. And now I can take a group of CEOs into the wilderness, give them something of value that at the time held no value. So that was another coping mechanism. Another coping mechanism that I learned is a study group. I was great. I never took notes. I've never taken any notes in any class ever. I close my eyes, I listen, I try to memorize everything I heard because I would have lost my notes in the first place. So what I learned though in college is I could only memorize about 75% of the content. I used to have teachers say, you come in here, you put your head down on the desk the entire class, and then you get a 99 on the final. How does that work? And I said, I'm paying attention and listening to you. She said, well, everybody else is taking notes. And said, they're paying attention to their notes. I'm listening to you. Although partners I've said that told me that I don't listen very well, but I pay attention to what's really important. Study groups were super essential for me because, like Swiss cheese, I'd space out for a minute, but in a study group, that person got the one question I would have missed. That person got the question that person would have missed. And in that study group, that's how I was able to get a 4.0. And then lastly, when I was in college, I worked at a pizza place for $10 an hour, and I hired an assistant for $7 an hour. It was a long time ago. She told me when to study, where to study, and when my papers were due. That's what I needed, and I've had an assistant ever since. It's not that I don't want to study, I just need to know when, where, and what. Put it in front of me, I'll crush it. So I've had support from somebody saying, you have a test on Friday, don't forget to at least review the notes 5 minutes before the test.
My current coping mechanism is really exercise, and it's been extraordinarily important for me. And I block out time in which to exercise, and I tell, if I have a meeting or something, I'm saying we're going to postpone it, we're going to move it. Nothing gets in the way of exercise because I've found over the years it's so important for my sanity, to clear my mind, everything. I'm still trying to convince my wife that it's that important, but she's like, you're just going and doing your own thing. If I don't, I'm useless to everybody else. So it's similar when you're on an airplane and the mask comes down, you got to put the mask on yourself before you can help anybody else. I gotta exercise, otherwise I'm nothing. So that's what I do, and it's pretty much what I did all going through school. Just try to exercise as much, be on a team, be involved with something.
I forgot the question. Was it back in school?
Positive coping mechanisms.
When in school, okay. Because I was yeah. I actually learned how to type in typing, and I think I liked it because there were cute girls in typing. And it was the old typewriters before the IBM Selectrics came out, before computers were really, all that stuff. And I think typing really helped think of words and how they went in what order. I'm so envious of the young students here tonight, because the iPads and the computers and all the technology that's really here to support you and putting things in the order they need to. Because if you were to look at anything that I write, nothing against doctors, but I have that sort of doctor's handwriting, and it's just terrible. And where my stuff is and and it makes sense to me, and I'm told by very smart organizational people that I'm very organized, but in a very freaky, weird way. So, you're going to be able to, the students and kids here are going to be able to learn your own unique way that works for you. And there's so many different programs, and there's so many different ways of learning. And so typewriting was one. The other that came to mind was lost, because I'm getting older. But the other thing I'm thinking of is things that give you a high mood, that elevate you. If you like hiking, hike. If you like art. If you like taking sea glass, go sea glass, surfing, exercise, whatever. Because you know deep in your heart that you're a good person and you're smart and you can do things, and you're bombarded with no, you can't, and do it the right way, and why can't you, and all that. But just trust in your heart what feels right, what feels good, what do you like, and keep on those things. Don't let your mind just keep rolling back into the I can and I'm no good and all that.
So it's funny, I'm listening and I'm trying to think, what are my coping mechanisms? And there are so many coping mechanisms, but the one thing that keeps ringing true to me is that when I was a kid, I used to clean a lot. And I don't think I understood why I cleaned until much later, when I started to organize a lot. And what I mean by that is I noticed I became very dysregulated all the time, and my projects became much harder because I was thinking about the 5 or 6 other things. I didn't understand their place. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that I have to organize small things, medium things, big things. My place needs to be organized. I need my car to be organized, which it is not right now. I'm terrible at it, but this is what I need to do. I realize I need to do this in my office to make sure that I understand the task, and I need to break my tasks down, which you hear a lot with kids that have ADHD, break these tasks down, because they need a little bit more gratification. They can do bigger stuff, but you get discouraged and you get distracted, you move on. But if you have organization, you tend to stay in that thing that you're doing longer. And so a good example of sort of like this organization piece is to show you how distraction really affects me. For instance, with language, I used to just think I picked the wrong words. I was dumber than the other kid across the hall because I picked the word that everybody knew what I meant, but it wasn't the right word. I'd do it because I was distracted and I couldn't find the word in my head, so I used the closest thing, and I used to think that was dysnomia, until I started to organize the things in my day and realized that I had to focus on this 1 or 2 things that are in front of me and put 5 6 out of the way. So if your kids are cleaning a lot to try to make themselves feel better, if they're cleaning their paper, if they're cleaning the document they're working on for school, like cleaning has a different meaning with the way I'm trying to use it, but it's organization at its root and cause of it. That's been my biggest coping skill. And I don't think I got it until I was in my 30s.
So again, I'll go back to elementary school because those were really pivotal moments for me in learning how to work with myself, because that's what education system really felt like. And I was lucky enough to have this spectacular 4th grade teacher, and she pulled me aside and she's like, look, I understand that you're having some struggles. You're still going to have to do it the way everyone else in the class is doing it, but let's talk, let's basically negotiate a modification of how you're going to get it done. And I still can't stand out of work. I don't spell well. I have an assistant that does all of my writing, and she does all of my spell checking, and that's never gone away from me. But that teacher allowed me an opportunity for, we called it popcorn reading. I don't know if it's still called that in school, but basically when you go around a room and you'd be the lucky winner of reading a little paragraph in a book. And that teacher allowed me to know the night before in what felt like a random sequence to the other kids, so I didn't feel called out. But she would say, and Jennifer, it's your time to read this paragraph. And I worked with my parents, or if I had a tutoring session that night, to memorize that entire paragraph. And what came from that is that was a self-confidence building experience, because I knew I was really good at memorizing. Like, you could tell it to me, just as Ryan was saying. And okay, I read out loud as people thought. I knew I wasn't reading the words, so it was still a little bit of, okay, how am I this much different than everyone else? But that was a real positive start to my coping, is figuring out workarounds or life hacks to the school system. And that teacher also taught me about the fact that I'm a good memorizer, that I should turn everything that I have to learn and regurgitate on a test into a game of memory. So make flashcards and make it a fun thing, and record your voice since you're so good at hearing, and hear that back on the way to school, or have someone read it to you. But definitely the popcorn kind of reading, asking the teacher how we can do it, and having a teacher that supported me to get a good grade, but I wasn't required to do it the same way. I still got the results they wanted.
That rings true for me also. I went to Catholic school all the way through high school, and we had to memorize Bible passages. Man, I rocked those things out because I could memorize them, and then I could move on to another subject that I liked way better than memorizing the Bible. But one thing that my parents did, which I found very interesting, why they sent me to this at such an early age, and they had the genius and insight to do this, is they sent me to a time management class when I was in 5th grade. I don't even know what age that is, but 5th grade. And back in the day, I'm now sounding like Chuck down there, right? Back in the day, we had planners, and teacher planner was all we had as far as planners went. And they separated our day into boxes of when I was going to focus on not only sports, but when I was going to focus on my education, what subjects I was going to focus on, when I had my tutoring sessions, when I went out to the learning van, wherever it was that I had to do, and I did that on a weekly basis. I did that every Sunday night for 2 hours, and I would assess my entire week. And so for me, it was all about the routine and the time management. I am great at time management to this day. To this day, I still use some of those skills that I learned back in 5th grade. And so separating out and looking at the time, effort, and energy that I had to put in order to graduate was way different than anybody else, because I had to add in sports and training and tutoring and all those other fun stuff that went with it. And another coping mechanism that I learned early on was I'm visual. So I think knowing your strengths, right? We have some people up here that talked about their audio. I'm definitely visual. I could see it on the board, and I could close my eyes and see when it was written on the board. Chalkboards, for those of you who remember what those were. Or whiteboards also. I could see it, but that's how I passed. I didn't necessarily comprehend it, but I could certainly see it, and I could get through those passings. So I think knowing your strength, know which one it is that is for you or for your students or for your children, knowing that strength certainly for me was very key in how I passed most of my grades.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Okay, next question. And this is maybe a more general question, what lessons or life lessons did you learn from your struggles in school? And we touched on it, but just...
I'm going to fail. I have multiple times, but I'm also going to succeed. I think taking risks because I'm so used to people telling me what I can't do. So I alluded to a couple things, so let me tell you my best revenge. So the second grade teacher, the fourth grade teacher, the freshman and high school teacher, and a junior, when I graduated from every single one of my degrees, I put a nice little note in the mail to all four of them. Maybe you should think about what you're saying to your students next time you tell them that they're pieces of crap, because that's what they were telling me. So my undergrad, my MBA, and my doctorate, they all got copies of that. It was actually kind of a little bit sweet revenge, and then I put it behind.
Life from your struggles, big picture stuff.
There's so many life lessons. There's no one way to do something and be successful. And the school system is going to tell you that 90% of the people do it one way. So you're going to feel like a black sheep from day one. You're like, well, I guess I'm going to go over here and puddle jump here and there. So I decided, I hated high school so much, when I showed up for my junior year, I went to the principal and my parents, and oh, by the way, when you become like distinctly aware of your learning challenges or differences, being a non-reader, I became a good negotiator. I was like, bring it on, let's do some eye contact right here, let's see how we can break this down. So I said, I hate high school, I want out. I've also learned that I was having a lot of trouble in school, and opting out and getting a job at age 5, 6, 7, and 8, although you can ask for it, is not an option. Although the legal system doesn't allow you to work, so you're going to have to go through school. I tried. So junior year, I'm like, this can work. I can get out of school now. So I presented a case that I was going to go for GRE classes and community college classes in the evening. I knew that, okay, I'm not a good reader, but I will outwork anyone in that room. So in my junior year, like those last 6 months, I did my entire senior year of credits and my junior year. Graduated, walked, and was given a scholarship to go to ASU. So that was like a high moment in my learning career. And then I got into a class of like 500 people, and the pace was so fast I dropped out. So like I would say my dyslexic upbringing has been like lots of highs, lots of lows, and so there's not one way to do it, but you learn to fall back on the fact that you are so resourceful, and if you have that support system with your family and your tutors, nothing can stop you. You're just going to be a little unique in like how you pivot. Like my parents were like, "You're dropped out of college?" That was not a good discussion that night. That did not go over well. Like, any kids, if you're thinking about that, maybe prep them, sit them down. Don't say, "Oh, by the way, I dropped out of school today." Yeah, it's not going to go over well. But you got to know that it's not something they can take from you, and you've been given the opportunity with a learning difference to actually be a very, very powerful person because of the fact that you're forced to fail every day. Kristen and I were talking about this. If you actually calculate it, you're spending at least 6 hours a day, 5 days a week before other tutoring to be presented with opportunities to know you can't succeed easily. So you're like a professional athlete at failure. You're like crying, like bring it on, like back this off. So, I mean, it's just, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I think if you've got the right people around you and the parents understanding your path isn't going to be the one they took, there's nothing that can stop them. There's more CEOs, there's more entrepreneurs, there's more people that generate more income for themselves, more jobs for other people that have something because they had to overcome adversity and they had to learn to be comfortable with being different.
I wouldn't change a thing. A couple of really good takeaways were I started playing the hand drums when I was about 14 or 15, and I had failed at everything. I was the youngest of 5 kids. I came from a very square family, lieutenant colonel, father, RN nurse, mother. There was no sports in my family. It was all academics and books. But I started playing the hand drums, and the biggest takeaway that, and then which led into dancing as well, is the progressive nature of accomplishment. And so drumming in particular, or let's call it music, just like anything else, you crash your bike, you get up and you start to ride your bike. That's a very brief progression, but then it kind of stops. Drumming or music is so vast that it was the first time in my life that Nobody else had any say in my development. I just had my drum by myself and a lot of time and energy on my hands. And I started progressing musically through it. And that was the very first time in my life I started developing my own confidence. Because I didn't have any confidence. Because my entire life, everybody told me I was dumb. Like, I was like, I'm not dumb. I can comprehend everything. I can read your aura, bro. I just can't spell. I'm sorry. Like, I get it. So the drumming was super progressive. The drumming really taught me that even though you might fail in other places, you can still have wins on your own, and nobody can really take that away. Another thing was, yes, sitting still is really hard for me. What's the opposite of that? Movement. I went to 50 states by the time I was 21 on my own accord, 50 countries by the time I was 25. Like, nobody ever gave me $1 for anything. I don't have a trust fund, I got nothing. And I did all those things because I had the energy to do it, because I knew that it was progressive. And I also worked physical jobs for a while because I had more physical energy than most people. And that really led me into a lot of other areas, and now I'm happy to say I was accepted to the campus of MIT to get my entrepreneurial master's. Who's up next?
I would say the biggest thing is to believe in yourself, and I know that's true for everybody, right? It's not just learning disabilities and ADHD, but with learning disabilities and ADHD, it's really hard, at least for me, it was very hard to believe in myself because you're getting negative comments all the time. And the believing in yourself is saying, well, there's something wrong with me, I know, but I know I'm smart. And something is not right here. Just because I can't answer and fill in a blank somewhere doesn't necessarily mean I'm stupid. But I'm telling you, from going through it, I felt stupid, and I'm still working through it. Some days I wake up and I go, what the hell am I doing? I got a big meeting in front of me, and this is a farce. I don't know how I got here. So everybody deals with self-confidence issues. I think it's very hard with learning disabilities and ADHD. But the truth is, if you talk to the most successful people in the world, they say they learn nothing from their successes, only from their failures. Because that's true. You don't learn much from succeeding. You learn from getting things wrong. So that's my big takeaway, and still working on it. It gets easier as time goes on, but it's hard when you're young to hear negative comments over and over again. You just have to believe that you can do better and succeed.
At a young age, there was some sort of event that I've tried to block out a few times that put in my heart and soul that I could do anything I want to do. And it was kind of a mantra that probably from 14 to 28, that was like, I could do anything I want to do. And boy, oh boy, when I live that way, life is really hard. But I knew I could do anything I want to do. I'm the guy that, goes, okay, let's go climbing to the top of the mountain. I make it, but everyone's put the flag up there, they've had the champagne, they're coming down, it's getting dark, and I make it, and then I gotta hurry or I'm gonna get lost. But I'd always be able to do everything. And at some point I realized that it's really, we can do everything we want to do. And when I live my life that way, it's so much easier. My mom and dad were there supporting me way back when I was young. It wasn't just me. They were doing the things necessary to help me succeed. I've been married, it's going to be 29 years soon. My wife has worked with me for 20 years. I'm realizing that when I hear her talk, I think she's nagging me. She's not nagging me. Most husbands would love a wife to remind them to do the things that are really important to do because they're knuckleheads and they always forget it. Well, all she's doing is supporting our greatness. She's supporting the things. And so for me, the we can do anything we want to do really shifted my ability. And when I live from that place compared to, I can do anything I want to do. I see less of those, constant failures, because she reminds me that, you need to do that. And if I don't do that, which I probably would have done, there would have been yet another failure. So there are people in your life. I'm surrounded with a team of people that we work with to help, and without them, I just couldn't be the person I was.
I love that. We all need a team to support us. So next is, in what ways do your learning challenges impact you today?
Kristen and I had a lot of time to prep.
We
before
did.
this today. We had to talk. I'm like, you know what? And we figured out why we get along really well as friends here. It's like, I still can't read off the menu at night. Like, I will point to, I think that's the chicken. Like, I can read chicken, but now food's so crazy with their names, all that stuff. I'm like, I'll have the chicken or I'll point to it. She's like, I order all the time for you. I'm like, I'm so happy. I know what I want. So, even today, I'm presented with opportunities to read, and if it's not outside of, I have all the contracts in my business memorized. It is a lot of paperwork, but it's not really changing. The revisions come in every now and again, but I'm good at memorizing it. Makes me a better negotiator because I don't have to re-reference the contract. But throw me a curveball like a menu, I'm like, I think this is what I wanted to eat tonight, yes. Back to the first part of the question, how we, sorry.
With your learning challenges, how they affect you today?
Yeah, but my dad told me at a young age that you are going to be someone that draws people to you, and you're going to have the people supporting you in the areas you're not strong enough. And he planted that seed in my head all the time when I'd come home crying about test results or not getting, or we'd open up the book and I'd want to run out the front door again, bring me back to the front door to study. And it's true, I have someone that does all that stuff for me. I'm the big idea person, it's fun for me, but I have that person to make sure the quality control is there and I'm not required to do the reading or spelling. So.
I guess for me is knowing your strengths, right? Algebra is certainly not mine. I don't know how many people can say in a room that algebra is their strength. It's not mine, which for me then relates to accounting. And I've run 3 companies and I took 13 accounting courses. I was gonna be an accountant, which is really funny to think about for a variety of reasons. Because I can't get my numbers. I transpose them, I certainly look at them, and it's just boring, just beyond boring for me. And so what I've done in my past, 2 companies and then this company is I've put myself as well as my entire staff through strength finders. So I know what my strengths are and I know what my staff strengths are. And I don't have an assistant, but I have 2 number 2s that basically do things for me that are not my strengths at all. So my number 2 is a CPA, MBA that loves to talk accounting, and every time she comes into my office with a spreadsheet, I cringe. I tell you, still to this day. So I've gotten her to the point that now she gives me a dashboard of 5 things, and that's all I want to see. I don't necessarily need to see the minutia behind it. So how did I translate that when I was younger? I certainly translated into what my strengths were. I figured out early on in college what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I was successful with. I loved business classes. I loved marketing. I loved accounting. Sadly, I love statistics. Think about that one for a second. There's a whole oxymoron there. It's like Intelligent Blonde, right? Like me. So I love statistics so much that I took 7 statistic courses. Who doesn't even like statistics? How can I not pass algebra and love statistics, right? It's so convoluted about what the things are that you will latch onto and you'll find as your strength and that you're actually really good at. I'd give myself a high 5 at statistics, but I got a D in algebra. So just know that working through your strengths for me is something that I still work at and I still know and figure out what my strengths are.
There's not a person in this room that doesn't struggle and have challenges. They just look different.
I think the one thing that I've always struggled with was decision making, because decision making requires you to be done with your thought process and finalize something. And I think, as you said, know your strength. I think you also have to work through your weaknesses. And so for me, I think a lot about when am I done with something? Because in my field, I have court deadlines. I have to be done with something. But I'm also not very good at preparing a draft and doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 drafts of something. I tend to like to think through it, organize it in my head, and then write it at the last minute. Don't tell anybody. So I think sometimes just working through your weaknesses and just persevering, and then your weaknesses get stronger. They may never be your strengths, but it might be a lot stronger than somebody else's strength.
I learned early on that I couldn't work for anybody. And so I
think that's all of us up here.
don't box me in. I'm too creative, right? No, but I couldn't listen to anybody because a lot of the times I'm like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I have to listen to this. So I picked professions and basically that I can do my own thing, and that gives me the flexibility, for instance, now to say, no meeting goes over 1 hour, period. If you can't get done in 1 hour, we'll do it another day. Because that helps me, and because I'm the boss, I get to do that. I get to schedule things when it's convenient for me, most of the time. You get to sort of create your own perfect scenario when you are your own boss. So for a lot of people that works when you do have ADHD, and you know when your strength is in the morning. For me, when I'm paying the most attention, and don't schedule anything in the afternoon because I'm out. So that's my biggest strength that I learned to cope with.
What I find most amazing listening to everyone is how different we all are. Oh my gosh. I wish I could memorize things. I'm not a memorizer. When I'm doing my best, I can point and click and find where I've archived something because it was at one point important, and God forbid if that underwriting guideline, I might need that one day. If I could find it somewhere. So so what's really interesting is everyone kind of has different strengths and weaknesses and all that. What doesn't work for me, thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And now I'm so much better because if it's not a high level, high mood sort of thinking, I try to just swipe that thought away and move on. Because if I swipe it away and I just take a little pause, or I look outside, there's going to be another butterfly that comes around because there's so many butterflies flying around always that I want to grab. So I might as well grab the good ones. And going down that rabbit hole of thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking of things that bother me is just something fabulous that I'm getting closer to wiping out. Proving I'm right when it's not important. I would say all of us probably, but I'm right, and because we failed so much, and we failed so much, and we were wrong so often, and we were rightly wrong, that boy, when we're right, we want to be right. And I've got to just get over that because there's no place for being right. It's just being a human and loving people and supporting people. Getting angry on little things. Oh boy, I don't know if anyone else, I don't think we talked about anger yet. None of us get angry.
He's always happy.
He's always happy, no, he's never stressed, but just anger really doesn't work. And giving myself a break, realizing, I'm starting to hear, like, really, I'm invited to being in a panel with all these amazing people. People are asking me to be substitute teach for their Kundalini Yoga class because they think I'm a good Kundalini Yoga teacher. Clients that are, people that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars are using me for home loans. And, I have to start listening to the world instead of thinking that it's my second grade teacher, Mr. Forstner, that just keeps saying, I'm never going to amount to anything. So just giving myself a break. Okay.
Now the unprepared ones.
Yes,
Yes, it has.
Unscripted questions.
All right, here we go from the audience. I'm a volleyball coach, and I'm here to learn how I can help my players with learning.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
You know the answer.
How can I help my players with learning disabilities or differences? Currently, I have a player who needs to be told what to do more than the rest of my players. Besides exercising patience, is there anything I can do to help her learn at a rate similar to the rest of the team?
Oh, I can take that one. So I was a tri-sport in high school and as well as in college. So I was volleyball, basketball, track in high school, and then field hockey, basketball, lacrosse in college. And I was one of those people too. I mean, I had to have extra time and extra play and the playbooks and all that other stuff. So what ended up happening in high school was, which I actually sort of enjoyed, was I decided to, with talking to a coach, try to learn every single position there was on the floor, which sounds kind of weird, but what it actually made me do was really focus on different positions that had to do different things with different movements. Now, girls do this a lot better than boys do. When we learn technical things like sports, we're extremely technical, right? High school girls, basketball, everybody should watch because you'll see the fundamentals and then some, because we're literally, you want our hands where and you want our hands high and how high, and for whatever reason, high school girls take that extremely literal. So I'm 6'1", and I was an outside hitter in volleyball, and back in the day, this was unheard of that I wanted to be a setter. So I was back row setter, front hitter, and away I went because I wanted to learn all those positions. I was a horrible digger because, you know, going down to the ground as 6'1" is a little challenging. But I approached my volleyball coach as well as my basketball coach, and it was one of those things that I ended up learning every single position on the floor. And one of my saving graces, really, with my educational differences was that I had sports and having the time management. So I think that would be my second key, is that not necessarily a coach helped me, but certainly a coach could help, that, you know, looking at the functions of everything that needs to get done and really checking in with that player. Did you go to school? I mean, we had to check in with every single class that we had to take, and teachers had to sign us in and sign us out, and study hall, and all those other things you have to do when you're an athlete. And so for me, it was really about the discipline that a coach was looking over my shoulder, wanting to know if my homework was done and wanting to know about the time, but also learning the functions of every single position on the floor, I think really helped with that. Anybody else want to share on that?
I have two daughters. My eldest is uber academic, uber's athlete, played 2 sports in college. So what came up for me is on her senior day of lacrosse, she got one of those cute little posters where all the kids write, you know, and she doesn't listen to me, as children don't do as they get older. But that is her resume of life right there. And what came to me was so many of her teammates said, "Jody, you are the most amazing person. I learned more from you in the 2 years I was on a team than I learned from all the coaches we had." And nothing against the volleyball coach here, but there's probably a girl like that on your team, and she would love to help, love to be a role model. She's already a role model, but you could even connect her with that player, because
as a communication specialist, I would say first off, good communication is not what you say, it's what the listener comprehends. And so if you're telling someone one way over and over and over and it's not sticking, the onus and responsibility on the communicator is to shift and or ask, how is it that I can best support you? What are the ways that you learn best? When I give you feedback, would you like it now in writing and paper? And also keep in mind, you know, everybody learns at a different pace. Just because somebody doesn't get it right away doesn't mean they're not going to be a star athlete. I played competitive semi-professional rugby, and I used to always come up to my coach after and say, what could I have done differently or better? And then I would take notes because I was interested in learning. Not everybody has that drive or initiative, and maybe someone just wants to be on the volleyball team because they like their friends that are on the team. So modify how the instruction is, and then also potentially ask them to visualize, because we already know scientifically that visualization is a precursor to enhanced performance.
And for me, I would just say, like my tutors, my parents, and myself, we all worked really hard to translate me. That's how I would describe my education experience. I didn't know. I wasn't young. I was too young to know. And through the educational system, I learned what I needed to know about how to be told, how to take something away. So I think as a coach, it would be a good exercise for you to even gain more compassion. Who are the people that they align themselves with to learn? And spend a little time with them and learn what traits they have that are positive, because as a coach, you're going to say, hey, I heard you did really well on that test today because we're working on memorizing. What if we memorize it this way? Or, just again, adapting the communication, because coming at it from one front, it's going to be frustrating for you, and they're not hearing it, and then they feel like they're not being successful when they're trying. So it's kind of like I felt like a lot of my education and learning was throwing the spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. Like, okay, this one you like to draw, right? So just adapting how you're talking to them and what you're needing them to do.
Awesome. I want to actually add to that as an educational therapist, and thinking about, you guys all touched on different ways to communicate, different ways that different people receive information. And we look at students as visual and kinesthetic and auditory learners. And so thinking of sports, and on a sports field, and even in a classroom a lot too, but especially on a sports field, you don't usually have a whiteboard or a blackboard or a handout or anything visual in front of you. And most people are stronger visual learners than they are auditory learners. So thinking of whatever those directions are that you're giving auditorily, if that can come with a handout, or with a text message or an email or whatever that might be, that could be visual to those students, could be really helpful. And the next question from our audience is, what advice would you give to your 12-year-old self, knowing you are trying hard with little progress while everyone around you is succeeding with what looks like little effort?
Great question. I'm ready for that one. I have it written out.
You knew this one was coming.
Well, I didn't know when it was coming. I didn't know how it would fit. Okay.
Did you get advance notes on this? I really want to discuss this for a second.
No, I just felt pretty deep today. Okay, so we are all crazy in our own unique, beautiful, loving, challenging, and happy and sad way. If I knew 5, 10, 25, 50 years ago that I'm already perfect, and the secret of my happiness comes from within me, not from what others out there say or do, my life would have been much easier. Any kids out here with learning disabilities? Okay, great.
Differences.
You guys are my friends.
There are no disabilities. Uniquenesses.
Opportunities.
You are your own test tube, okay? Take ownership. You're 100%. All of us are our own test tubes. What you think, what you eat, what you drink, what you say, what you do, what you listen to affects the happiness within you, inside your own little test tube. Take ownership. It's really important for all of us to do that. I lost 12 pounds recently. I went on the Whole30 diet, and I had this crazy sugar addiction. And my wife and I went on it, and I don't have this crazy sugar addiction anymore. And probably sugar messed with my brain and everything. So, we're all on the same team. If I know sometimes teachers and parents don't my wife, they don't understand me, they don't get, other people don't get who you are. And just realize that there's people out there, the team out there is there for you. My wife's not nagging me. She's on my team, she's supporting me. For 30 years she's been doing that. And I just need to hear things, and that test tube of mine, put in good stuff, realize, take ownership of it. It's not someone else's problem. Damn world diet, why do I have all these things? Well, you have them and just live with them. Okay, thank you.
I would say the biggest thing is, and it's the same for people without disabilities, learn to love yourself and what makes you unique. And with learning disabilities and ADHD, you are unique. Ned Hallowell says that people with ADHD are like Ferraris with bad brakes. So there's beauty in things, and then there's two sides to everything. But learn to love yourself because you are unique. You're special, and not special as in special. You're special, and you deserve to be loved.
So, if I could go back to my 12-year-old self, he wouldn't listen. That's it. I don't think I can say anything at 12. But I know the concept I'd like to have at 12 that I still don't fully grasp today. We get expectations from our family, we get expectations from life, we get expectations from ourselves. And if I could go back and learn the one thing that I think I'd still like to learn today, it's be in the moment of whatever you're doing. That your expectations are challenges and they're not goals that have to be met.
Oh, little Rye guy, he was so sweet. What I would tell my little baby bro is I would say that there is a lot of fear that is generational. There's a lot of fear that a parent believes the reflection of their child is the reflection of their ability to parent. My mother taught me, she said, I can provide each of you children the tools, but it's up to you to do the building. And I don't judge myself based on how well you build, that's on you. I know what I did. The other thing is, I would have probably told my 12-year-old self is, you don't know what's ahead or what's in store for you, but do good, be good, lend a helping hand, spend quality time with your friends and your family, and the rest should take care of itself. This fear that if you don't get good enough grades, you're not going to get into a good university, and you're not going to get a good job, that's for the birds. That's so 1975.
Easy.
Like, we're not doing that anymore.
Easy.
You can get into an Ivy League school or not. You can start Facebook and drop out. It doesn't matter ultimately what my parents thought. What matters is, am I in tune with my community? Am I in tune with my surroundings? And am I in tune with my being as a person? And I go back to the love piece. Little baby bro, you gotta have a lot more love than you do at the time because you've been dejected and beat up your whole life coming up. And the truth is, there's greatness in store for you that none of them will ever know, see, feel, or even experience because it's entirely your own. And it's yours to own. So just be okay with where you are, be here now, focus on your breath, do your yoga, and drink green juice.
At 12.
What else?
So if I'm thinking about age 12, fear was like at the forefront. I mean, you wake up, you're like, I'm gonna go read a book today. Am I? Is it gonna happen? I don't know. I mean, where's this gonna go? So each year when school started, with my parents, I said, you don't know what they do to you in 4th grade. You don't know what they do to you in 5th grade. Like, this is the year I am going to drop out. Like, it's not gonna be able to go to the next grade. So I think it would be really awesome if I would have been able to have someone even 3 or 4 years ahead of me that had similar learning struggles that said, hey, you know what, you're gonna make it through, and it seems scary because it's a lot of stuff that you're being put in front of that you're not comfortable with. But the thing that my parents were amazing at was reminding me that you are getting lessons and you're getting tested in ways that other people aren't because they're more comfortable. And when you are uncomfortable, when you think you're failing, or when you have that like kind of fear, you can channel it in two directions. One is for a positive outcome to strengthen your self-confidence, and the other is to admit defeat and say, I can't do any better than that. And so 12-year-old self, I would say, I stick to what you're hearing with your parents. You believe in yourself because you're getting lessons that are going to, unfortunately, at 12 you don't have patience, but in your later teens, in your early 20s, all of a sudden you're going to have so much confidence about taking a risk or putting yourself out there that other people just didn't because they could pick up a book or they could do it so easily. They weren't tested. They were never uncomfortable. They just put a little bit of effort in and it worked out. And when you're uncomfortable, you're growing. So I think it's a hard spot, but it's a really, really good spot in the long run.
I would tell my 12-year-old self that high school doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It was awful and miserable for me. Now, the other thing I would tell my 12-year-old self too is value my relationship with my parents. My parents were so great on so many levels. For the educators in the room, maybe don't listen to this part, but I'm going to share the story anyway. My mom in high school, because it was so challenging for me, and I'd come home in tears almost every day, probably every day, for a variety of reasons, of course. She would check me out of school, say I had a doctor's appointment, take me to go get my hair done, and take me to lunch. And it would just be a day with me and my mom. And I'm here to tell you, that one day alone was my savior. It was my true savior that I could go and spend the day with my mom and just be told how great it was. So the moms and the daughters in the room, take your daughter out during the school day and write her the note that says it will both be educational as well as enjoyable for Kristen.
I love that. Thank you. This is another great question. Assuming that you did perceive yourself as a failure when you were young, many of we already realized
Yes.
I'm not a bit.
Yes.
When did that perception change and why? And then it also adds, was there a person or event that was responsible for that shift?
Can I start with this? Okay. So I touched on the fact that I got a scholarship, graduated high school early and was starting at ASU and walked out. And that was not a good moment within the family. But I found a way to get into DePaul, which is a private university in Chicago. I did not have any good test scores. I had good grades from the community college. But I had a meeting with the dean and I said, if you let me into this school, there's no one that is going to show you that I'm more committed to representing what a student you would want them to basically symbolize or embody. And it is my commitment to figure out how to get straight A's because I am done excusing myself for not being able to read and not being able to pronounce things. And I want to do better in my university experience than 99.9% of them, so that when I can't read or I send out an email to a CEO or someone that makes all this money, I said, hey, up front, you knew I was dyslexic, you found a spelling error, good work. So I wanted to detach from that rainy cloud that was dyslexia. And I graduated top of my class, top 20, straight A's, and 1 B plus, an 89 point, like they wouldn't round up. And,
Of course they wouldn't.
But I was also asked to speak at my graduation, and I did everything I told that dean I was going to do. And I told him, you're going to bet on me, but you're not going to be betting on like a bad horse. This is someone that's got a chip on their shoulder about all the things I've had to go through in my schooling. And I'm here to set the story straight that I am smart, that I am committed, and I will persevere. So, yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting about probably all of us, and we all have this story to share, is that we ended up at really high academic marks. Every single one of us sitting here. I ended up at a 3.9. My undergrad, I graduated high school at maybe a 1.6. I needed 14 on my ACT to play sports, and I took the ACT 7 times, I think. So I think to know that you have to keep your feistiness. I'm really feisty, and I'm scrappy and feisty, and certainly I have to protect myself, and I would fight for my academics. I did 26 years of education and ended up with a doctorate degree, which anybody who's gone through a dissertation process will tell you it's the most horrific thing. There's only 1% of Americans that have a PhD, And the reason they do is what's called a dissertation. Everybody's sitting at ADD, all the dissertation, and I know why so many people are sitting there. So for me, my biggest accomplishment was when I walked across the stage and I started crying because it was finally, I had justification and I have no more degrees that I can get.
In relation to failure and success, playing my drums, I would find people if they had a drum in their house, oh, you've got a drum, can you show me something? And like a sponge, all these different people in my time were showing me little bits. And then one day I realized that there were less people showing me things, and people were saying, can you show me something? And I went, in a sense, from a student to a teacher, somewhere around 15, 16, 17, because I looked back and said, wow, I progressed at this. Like, I don't suck at everything. Like, I actually got good at this drum thing, and now other people are like, can you show me something? And that was when I started teaching. And that gave me value and purpose, and I was like, well, actually, I have something to offer. I mean, you know, in 5th grade, I tried to go out for drums. The teacher told me I had no rhythm, and that I should try the trumpet. And I remember, I was like, are you serious? He goes, yeah, you're never going to be a drummer. I was like, screw that guy. And then in 7th grade, my friend had some bongos, like, let me take those things home. And I played them in front of him. He goes, yeah, you shouldn't drum. You don't have rhythm. And I was like, screw you, man. So for me, every single time I have a failure, I see it as an opportunity. I love failing. I love taking the hill. I love being broken down because I know it's providing me something that the couch sitters are never going to get. That the easy people that took the easy route, that went around the hill, at the end of the day, they have atrophy. And I know every single day of my life, I'm hucking myself against the wall. So yes, I'm a failure, 100%. I failed at my marriage, I failed at other things, I had to fire my GM. But at the end of the day, I love making sure I'm never complacent, comfortable, or felt like I've arrived. In yoga, they say it's a practice, and I am more interested in the quality of the journey, not the destination.
Can you repeat the question?
Thank you.
Looking back at your failures.
Looking back at your failures, was there, when did it change? When did that shift occur from failure to you're like, hey, I can see this?
So by the way, this is the dividing line with the memory. Struggle with the memory.
That's true. These guys were closer to the questions.
I will say my dividing line was definitely graduating college. I had dropped out twice. I spent over 10 years through community college all the way to a 4-year university to get a degree. I went from the most terrible grades you could possibly have when I entered into a 4-year to basically my major getting almost a 4.0. Very similar to what they were sharing. And honestly, college to me was better than law school. Not because I enjoyed the journey more. In fact, it was just the perseverance of it. I had promised myself I was going to do it. And once it was done, it felt better than getting my law degree. To get it out of the way, to get it done, I know I could do it.
I would say that I haven't made the shift in thinking that I'm successful. And I think that's what keeps the drive in me going. Because there's always something more. It does cause some frustration, but it also makes me do more. As soon as I start thinking I'm a success, I don't think I will be. So that's what keeps me going. It's the drive of somebody. Nothing's better than someone telling me that's not going to work, you can't do it. I mean, I love hearing that now. And when I was younger, I didn't like it, but now it gives me motivation.
I'm constantly inventing new answers to that question of when did I figure it out, because it's constantly happening, because just like you mentioned, you know, I'm not starting like, oh, he's the best at this. I'm starting like, you don't know anything, and how do you do it, and going from that to the achieving. I'm turning 60 on May 20th, and I decided I'm going to have a picnic, Chuck's 60th picnic and music festival. And during lunch today, my wife was reminding me all the stuff I don't have together. but it's going to turn out perfectly. I already have 2 bands. I have an amazing sleighs. There, a lot of people said yes, and it's going to work out fine. And there's just the constant reinventing of, how did we take this to make it that, and how do we make it successful? And really what comes up with, I don't need to try so darn hard. It is not, I complicate things, I make it more difficult. I probably don't need to do anything until my wife has a question. I can just answer it or figure out the answer and then wait for her next question to come up. Because I'm supported by something that's not going to, it's like God's not here to let us fail. We're all innate. The innate wisdom inside of us and innate success inside of us is going to all work out fine. The warrior that is inside me can take a few steps down and just, be more of a meditative yoga teacher. And it'll probably be easier for the rest of my life.
Well, thank you guys so much. I think everyone here feels like they got a very personal glimpse at your full journey and a lot of really impressive insights into who you are today because of that journey too. We are going to wrap up. If you have any questions, and we didn't get a chance to get to all of the questions, I'm sure these guys will be willing to speak with you for a few minutes as we all kind of make our way out this evening. But I just want to thank you all for coming here this evening and for listening and for your great questions. And we really, I think I can speak for Donica too, just say that we are here to help with anything that you might have questions about in the future. And we're just so happy to have had you all here together with us tonight. Thank you so much to our panel.
Nobody wants to leave.
I'm going to get to do one thing against stuff.